Hello everybody, it's time for a layout tour. This is a upstairs bedroom. It's about a 12 by 14 or so. Right here by the door we have our Cascade Mountains, and some of you who have watched my channel for years have seen blood, sweat and tears in trying to get this big loop around the mountain to work just right. It's doing pretty well right now. Cross your fingers. Over here we have the maintenance shed, an old SP boxcar, of course. There's a worker there doing something. Over here we have the Pacific Crest Trail campground, where the PCT crosses over the Southern Pacific Union Pacific main line around Odell Lake. Here's our tunnel, and here's the old portal, which they've got some concrete blocks and some fencing in front of it. Mount Jefferson in the background. Come on around. I'm going to put some stills on later so you can get everything, but this is the CJ Sawmill, just high in the Oregon Cascades. I don't do a lot of switching on it because it's a real pain in the ass, but it looks pretty good for a diorama. Hard at work. You can see it had rail service before. Those of you that are longtime viewers know that the sawmill used to come in here and come that way. But putting a switch in the middle of that increasing radius curve didn't work terribly well. But the sawmill lets me put a lot of cool stuff. Wood loads, an old Pacific Fruit Exchange or Express boxcar. It's weather worn. It lets you put in little stuff. These giant log sections, they're actually the bottom to these Christmas trees. I just darkened them up and put some rings on them. This is a cardboard extension that covers up that 90-degree angle up under there. I have had numerous problems with this switch. Seems to be doing all right lately, but again, a pain in the ass. So it wouldn't be Oregon if there wasn't a Christmas tree farm. We'll let our 90s SP freight go by. That's basically the model years up here, or the years I try to model. Great grammar. 7 years of college down the drain. But it's anywhere from like the 80s to the 2000s. And then sometimes I go back into the 60s and run some stuff, have you seen lately with my PAs. But basically an Oregon farm. Try to keep my big water head out of the, making a shadow. I like built and ready structures. I don't have to spend a lot of time on them. Cornfield, pasture, a couple of decrepit sheds, and it wouldn't be Oregon if you didn't have an old couple of piece of shit cars laying around just rusting away. Vegetable garden, critters, Kodachrome. Hey, Oregon in the 90s. And in fact, I used to see these Kodachromes up well into the 2000s on both SP and BNSF freights. It was really cool. So this corner here, that's just foam board cut and roughed up, a couple of different sections. And then it's got that spray, that's that Krylon, that spray that has like rock in it. Now, Oregon City has 3 levels. Here's the top level. Where the municipal elevator comes up to. This bottom level, which I'd be standing at about the Willamette River. but I'm not going to model that. But downtown Oregon City, excuse me, downtown Oregon City in the 90s had street running on Main Street. I'd come home from work and these guys would be shuffling cars around at the Blue Heron Paper Company, which is now being torn down. Some of the tribes in Oregon have bought it, and it's been in a legal quandary ever since. But I don't think there's going to be any more rail service. But it did have a very short, steep lead. Not as short and steep as this one, because I measured this one out at 6%. But if you look at some of the pictures of Oregon City trains, you'll see the leads down into the paper mill. Once in a while, I'll do some operations down here. But many times, I'll just film trains from right about here. And that's pretty much the view you get where the main line goes over Highway 99. And just like in real life, you can still see the SP Herald and the low clearance. This is where I just shot the other day, the Coast Starlight coming through. It would have been actually from this corner, right about there, filming up as the Starlight came by under the elevator and headed north. And unfortunately, 2 hours later, it hit and killed somebody trespassing on the tracks up in Kelso Longview. But a lot of neat stuff down here. You don't see it that much because I don't run that many operations down here, but it's kind of cool. Residential area up along the Clackamas River. Found these figures. This is where I have been shooting a lot. Kids waiting for the trains, and dad's barbecuing, and mom and whoever working on their tans. Clackamas River, people fishing for salmon. I think there's an overloaded canoe or two back there. View of Mount Hood. I always like this shot where it's coming up, where you get the mountains in the background. So one road crossing. I made Mike's Drive-In in Milwaukee. Took pictures of it, and actually I think it's kind of cool. You might like these. And most of my buildings are not glued down. So that's what the front of Mike's really looks like, where you order and everything. And then the side too. But Mike's in Milwaukee, they've got great chow, and it's right next to the tracks. In fact, I moved the picnic tables that they have. I moved them over to my little park here by the depot, and the old broken down steam engine. If you go to Mike's, there's a lot of outdoor seating, and you just watch the trains come up the top of that 1% grade out of the Willamette River watershed. Over here, it's just kind of a location for extra trees and stuff. Just kind of blocks the 90-degree curve here. This was about the simplest project I ever made. I painted a bunch of rust on an old broken Southern Pacific engine, put a piece of track down, a couple pieces of fencing, and poof, there you go. I should get an older Dairy Queen, because this would be good for like 80s, 90s, but when I run the older trains, it should have the old one. But, well. So this town doubles for about anything on the layout. I made a video of how I made this, because to be realistic, the train tracks have to turn for some reason. Well, there's a cliff there and a farmhouse. So. Those of you that are familiar with the area know that Canby, Oregon, south of us, has their old SP Depot repurposed as the Canby Depot Museum. There's a picture of their sign. It's not that great, but they also have a caboose next to it that has Canby, Oregon on it, and it's kind of neat. I'm no great artist, but that's our road off into the hills. So coming over here, this is kind of the heart of the layout. This is Southern Pacific's Brooklyn yard in like the 80s, 90s, 2000s. They kept the roundhouse until 2012. It was torn down, and then it's all intermodal now. I got a video on somewhere where Holgate Avenue crosses right about here, elevated. But you might say, what are those engines doing there? That looks like a kid's toy train layout. But it's accurate. You know, as soon as this guy goes by, I'll explain it, Lucy. So, Great Northern F7, that's Doyle McCormick's. It still lives today, and it runs at the Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad down in Garibaldi. This is what his nickel plate 190 looked like when he brought it up from Mexico. And it sat next to the roundhouse, and it looked just like that. Spare daylight tender. It's actually a hallmark ornament. Don't tell anybody. You've been seeing my travails with the new PBs. So here's what his 190 looked like after he got it all done. They're admiring it. Try not to put them in the same shot because it's crossing the streams. But at the roundhouse, Chris Fussell used to keep his F40 PH 231 in Operation Lifesaver paint, and there it is. I'm probably the only person ever who's modeled it. I got Operation Lifesaver decals from a Norfolk Southern decal set on microscale and put them on there. And I've sent him pictures. He thought it was pretty good, and he's probably getting a restraining order against me right now. The queen of the Brooklyn Yard Roundhouse, SP 4449. Run it on excursions, and sometimes I'll do some period stuff. Inside, substituting for SP&S 700 is another hallmark ornament. I think it's an old Hudson. But there's a lot of pictures of the roundhouse area, and that's pretty much what it looked like. There were some intermodal tracks down there. Wouldn't be Portland without homeless camps, blue tarps, people living out of their shopping carts, pushing stuff around, boarded up buildings. But mainly I use this for car storage and setting up trains. But it's all wired up and it all works. And every once in a while I'll clean this guy up and I'll actually shun a boxcar down there. But right now it's where the cabooses or the caboose stay. But this lets me store a lot of trains up here. I went to our local Kroger affiliate, Fred Meyer, and I've been adding more of these bins. But this is where I keep my locomotives, cars, on that high-class masking tape. But like, you know, BN family locos, that's all my Great Northern, Burlington, SP&S, and all that. And then, just to keep them straight, the BN ones. Craft desk that I don't use that much because it's really dark under there. Main throttle, switches for the yards and the mains, and the little sidings. I took one off that I don't use much the other day. Connected it to under here for the blue heron when I did some switching ops, and that simply is a piece of cathode track wired up and then down there. So I'll put on some stills. You can look at some of the little details, but that's a tour of the layout. Mainly 80s, 90s, Southern Pacific, so you can have a little bit of everything on there. UP, Rio Grande. Most people forget that Rio Grande actually bought SP in 1988. But I like the little details. Fueling racks. This guy here, that's one of those Southern Pacific dummy units they had like in Reader's Digest. I bought a bunch for like $2 at a craft show or a train swap show. Painted up black, threw some SP decal or Denver Rio Grande decals on it, and poof, there you go. Horn Alley. Produce Row area of Portland. It's not perfect, but you get the idea. And you can see the buildings across the river stuck to it. So my camera tells me that's 15 minutes. That's way too much. Have a great day. Enjoy the stills, and we'll talk to you later.